you're Taylor's brother, you're our friend. But like for anybody listening, like I think just the opportunity to share about like, because I don't think it was your life call like all the time. Like you knew that you were gonna end up in Bible school. Like maybe just like take us back a little bit to like
Good call.
What was that like? And then we can go in the trip.
I mean, I would say I haven't had one of the easiest lives. I was not a believer until about five-ish years ago, a little over 5 years now. And a lot of my life before being a believer was in drugs, was working as much as I possibly could to get my mind off of other things. But, you know, moving to Pittsburgh, I moved up here in May of 2018, and I moved up here and I actually didn't like it. I didn't feel like it was home. I didn't feel like it was a place that I belonged. But Taylor kept inviting me and telling me to come to a church. He said, come Wednesday nights, come Sundays. Wednesday nights were college nights. And I was out of college, but it was still like a young adult crew. And it was about 6 months into me living in Pittsburgh that I did start believing. So
just to jump in real quick, I remember that like vividly because I was fairly like early in our relationship too. And when you would would come to like the young adult gatherings and stuff, and like you can like talking and being like, I think it's really amazing my brother's here, but also having concern of like, if this doesn't stick, I don't know what he's going to go back to.
Yeah.
And where that would go. And like just wanting like,
I think it's like, I've talked about my story a little bit more, obviously. But I think it's wild if you go back, you know, anywhere from 10 to 15 years and look at both of us. I mean, 10 years ago, I was 21. You were
11.
18, 17.
18. We're 3 years apart.
Yes.
I was a little off.
Somewhere in there. But like, I know and you went through things in life that I never went through.
Yep.
Obviously you had your own experiences and went through different things. And I think to look at where we both are now is insane to think about.
Completely agree.
And I don't know if you get this very much. We've never really talked about this, but I know that I have gotten like DMs or messages or different things from people that I ran with 10, 15 years ago.
Yep.
And they're like blown away by, you're on the internet talking about Jesus now?
Yep.
Like, do you remember such and such?
Yeah.
But I think it's also like the greatest story in the world, because I think that everybody has somebody in their mind of like, oh, they're too far gone, or oh, they'd never come to church. They'd never accept Jesus. They'd never such and, you know, whatever. And if you knew both of our stories, and I'm 3 years older, and I think I just got around the right people a couple of years before you did.
Yep.
That's all it was.
I completely agree. And
now to like experience my own growth, but then to watch you grow, like there's no one. If there should have been two people who were out of reach, it should have been me and Thomas. But the fact that now we're both here, he's in Bible school. I've started like 3 companies. Like we're doing this. Like we're very public with our faith. Like we're doing these things is like a very, very, very drastic change, and like that should be very, very encouraging to anyone out there.
And I think it goes back to why, for me at least, that I'm able to resonate with a lot of people. Is that I've been through so many different things and parts of life that at such a young age that I'm able to resonate with people that could be 20 years older than me or 10 years younger than me that might be going through the same things I went through.
Yeah.
And so that's helped me and I'm not a pastor, but it's helped my pastoral ministry of being able to talk to people and be able to get to know them.
Yeah.
And I think both of us have been in situations where, I mean, when I was serving in the church that we go to several years ago, like there every Sunday, like there would be people who would walk in off the street high.
Yep.
And like I would go and talk to them
Right.
because I understood exactly where they were.
Right.
And like that's something that some people have, but not everybody has.
Mhm.
Yep.
And I think that that makes it an amazing thing. But to get back to like
Yeah.
the original question
Yep.
of like what set in motion you actually going to signing up for this program and doing it.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm a technically a new believer in my opinion. Only being a believer for 5 years, I feel like I don't have much under my belt in the realm of Christianity. Not saying I'm not a mature Christian. I'm not saying any of that, but I would consider myself a newer Christian comparatively to most people. But going back to 2018, it was August of 2018 that I was at my house in Pittsburgh, and multiple times in my life I tried to kill myself, and I was thinking about killing myself again while here in Pittsburgh, and I dropped down to my knees in my bedroom, and I prayed for probably 2 hours. Didn't know what I was saying, didn't know what I was doing, just did it. And I ended up falling asleep maybe 3 a.m. that night, and I didn't know what I just did. And I basically professed my life to God. And so, I didn't realize what I did that night. And so about a month went
Can I
by.
just stop you for a second?
Yeah.
And then like I want you to continue that story.
Mhm.
But like what you're talking about right now, that is of the utmost importance of sharing the gospel and sharing the name of Jesus. And I'm by no means taking credit, and I want to say this, but it makes me sound like I don't know, it doesn't matter. We've recorded an episode that is actually yet to come out, and I don't know if this episode is going to come up before it or after it, but we talk about this idea of hitting rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, hitting rock bottom is dying. Hitting rock bottom might be committing suicide, right? And in that moment, I feel like you hit rock bottom and you didn't have anywhere else to turn, and it was a quote unquote last resort.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if no one had ever exposed you to like, hey, you can pray. Hey, this is a God who loves you and also has grace for you, and it doesn't matter what you looked like before, it doesn't matter what you've done, then that night could have looked a lot different.
Yep.
Yeah. The other, if you're comfortable, I would say this is like a topic right now, and it's a huge issue. But we've seen like, with, I would say the generation that you're in and other, like the spike in suicide is gone way up.
Yep.
So it's like a real issue. So it's like, I kind of, if we can like spend a little bit of time on this, because I think it's something that is, whatever you were feeling, that's what I want you to talk about that took you to those spots, because I feel like that's something that a lot of people feel.
Yeah.
And they need to know they're not alone
Yep.
in that too.
I mean, I would say the biggest feeling is the feeling of not being welcomed in the world, not having a place or having a say or having a purpose. Yeah, I mean that's the best word for it. Of just and like everyone deals with this. Even now that I'm a Christian, I've dealt with like what is my
Mhm.
purpose
Right.
in the church, or what is my purpose in life. But back then it was, I didn't have a purpose for myself.
Mhm.
And now the realization is that God has put a purpose in me.
Mm.
And even if I don't know what that is, God's still working in me to find that purpose.
Yeah.
And I have a joy in that.
Mm.
And I mean, I think for anyone out there that has struggled with suicidal thoughts or even trying to kill themselves, is that if you're still here today, then you have a purpose. Like there is a reason why that time that you tried, or the time that you thought about, that you got out of that mindset, that there's a reason that you're still here. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to try and kill yourself. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean, I've taken multiple drugs to try and like end it, because I thought that these drugs were going to be the deciding factor of me not being here. And when I woke up the next day, I was like, why did this not work?
I don't think I've ever heard that said before. There's a
hard.
stigma that you look at people that have those thoughts, and it's like almost being like, why are you this weak? Or they're a coward. And they actually flip that and say, like, just to acknowledge the fact it takes a lot of guts to do this. Like, I don't want anybody to do that, but like
Right.
just saying that is like, whoa, like you really are, like there's a level of commitment, and like there's like serious choices that are being made mentally and spiritually in your heart that says like that you've actually reached the point that you decided that this
It's-
is, wow.
It's wild because I was going to take my own life back in college, basically. And it was because it did feel like the easy way out. It did, because it felt like the pressure and the things building around me were so difficult
Mhm.
to get out of. And a person's love saved me. But I think what's crazy about it is I've now read books about it. And there was a book written, Matt, see if you can find the name of this. Maybe it was an article or a journal, but there was a book written about suicide where they interviewed a bunch of people who had tried to jump off the Bay Bridge in San Francisco to kill themselves. And a lot of them, it didn't work. It didn't kill them. They either landed in one of the nets that are now there for safety, or they landed in the water and it didn't kill them. And there was some kind of study or book or something written where it literally talks about how everyone who was still alive, they said the second that they jumped, they regretted it.
Hmm.
The second that they jumped off the bridge, they regretted making that decision.
So the book is Cracked Not Broken,
Yes.
Surviving and Thriving After a Suicide Attempt by Kevin Hines.
Wow.
Yes. And so if suicidal thoughts are anything that you struggle with, have ever struggled with, are currently struggling with, I would highly recommend that book just to go get. It's the only impression we can get from people who have gone through an experience like that before,
Mm-hmm.
and who have actually
Been on
taken
the
the
other
step to do it. It didn't work, and then they got to give basically an interview and give some feedback around it, and it's really, really eye-opening.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that book definitely helps a lot of people, and I think in my sense, like, it's different because I didn't regret the decisions I made. Like, I decided to kill myself, and that was the decision I made. And I would say this about both of us: we're very headstrong. Like, when we make a decision, we made a decision, and I made that decision, and my purpose wasn't fulfilled at that time.
Yeah. What was the emotion or the feeling that like the next morning you were really left with? Because if you're like headstrong, like you're not regretting what you did you feel like I just didn't do enough? Like what, like,
well, I
what
woke up
was,
20 hours later, because I was
Jeez.
basically put myself in a drug coma. And I didn't talk about this until giving my testimony at the church that we all we attended or attend now. And I woke up that day and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what time it was. I didn't know how long I had been out. And the crazy thing about it is the first thing I checked was my phone to see if anybody had wondered where I was at. And no one had texted me or called me. And so it was like a very eye-opening thing of like, so it didn't work, but at the same time, no one cared about me, you know? And so, I mean, I think the emotions of waking up was, why didn't this work? Why am I waking up with my eyes open and seeing the sun, you know? And so, I mean, I think that, like, going back to everything that had happened, I fell to my knees, I prayed for hours, and I woke up the next day and nothing had changed still. And so I professed my life to God. I professed all of these things to God, and nothing had changed. But I was like, well, I'm still here. I'm still being able to talk to people, go to church, go to see friends. Because I mean, at that time, like I was going to church to be with friends. Like that was my purpose. I didn't go there because of God. And about a month went by in August of 2018, and I woke up one morning, and I mean, I remember this like it was yesterday, is that I woke up and I felt a hand on my shoulder. I felt a presence around me that was peace. I felt a presence around me that I was okay and that I was going to be okay. And that was the day that I started believing. I knew that God, and the thing about it is, and going back to me waking up that day, was everything that I had prayed about before that month earlier had come true. So the things that I had prayed about were having friends that were intentional about getting to know me, having a good job, which I know doesn't matter, but it mattered to me at the time. And this was the time that we were building the business. It was a time where I felt lonely. I felt afraid. I felt inadequate. I felt all these things. And, I woke up this day and I knew that I had friends. I knew I had friends that cared about me. I knew I had a family that loved me, and they always loved me, but I never felt that because it was just in my brain. I have a very, very loving family, and I'm very blessed to have that family. But my inadequacy changed into people having conversations with me about my past and why I'm still here and why do I come to church and all of these things. And I had multiple people walk up to me that said, like, conversations that I've had with you have changed my life. And so it was a realization that my time here on earth wasn't nothing. It was a time that I realized that God had put me on this earth for a reason, to pour into people, to speak into people, to give people their potential that they have in their life, because I never thought I had potential. But I know that now I do have potential and I can pull that out of people.